Hi, and welcome to Horror Recapped. Today we'll be examining 2005's Tamara. Beware, spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. The movie begins with a girl, Tamara, fast asleep in a classroom. She dreams that she is making out with her handsome English teacher, Mr. Natali, but her dream is interrupted when Mr. Natali calls her name. She wakes up and she's embarrassed to see her classmates staring and laughing at her. Mr. Natali hands her a newspaper after school and tells her how impressed he is that she had written a published article about the school's athletes. Tamara, who is a shy girl, walks to the locker room with her head bent low. She bumps into Keisha, who tries to intimidate her, but Chloe comes to her rescue and defends her. The article talks about athletes who use steroids to win their games. Sean and Patrick are athletes in the school and are not happy to hear this news because it caused their coach to seek for them to be tested. The two athletes are not going to let it slide as they are out to hurt Tamara. Keisha, who is Sean's girlfriend, is aware of Tamara's crush on Mr. Natali after Tamara tried to kiss him. Sean has a perfect plan to hurt Tamara, so he approaches Roger, who is a nerd, for help. Chloe and Jesse are invited to the party. They are not aware of Sean's plan, and so they're eager to go to the party. Tamara is busy with a love-binding ritual to make Mr. Natali love her, but she ends it when her blood is required for the ritual. Sean pretends to be Mr. Natali and places a call to Tamara, inviting her to a motel room. He had hidden a video camera in the room. Tamara arrives at the motel and begins to undress after she sees a note instructing her to. Sean, Keisha, and Patrick are aware of this prank, but Roger, Jesse, and Chloe are not aware, but are also in the room next to Tamara. They watch her undress on a television screen, believing she is a dancer. Sean comes in and begins mocking Tamara, who is in her undies. Tamara gets dressed and runs out, but she is stopped by Chloe, who comes to help her after she realized what was going on. Tamara misunderstands things and begins hitting Chloe to stop her. She is pushed by Patrick, hits her head on a table, and dies. Chloe is about to call the police, but she is stopped by Sean, who blackmails her into burying Tamara. The group is confused to see Tamara in class the next day. Roger sends a televised message to the whole school as he cuts off his ear, tongue, and stabs himself in the eye. This happened after Tamara had appeared to him and tormented him with what happened that night. But Patrick believes Tamara is a witch since she was into magic. They head to where they buried Tamara and find a spell book. Tamara had cut the page out of her spell book the night she was murdered. Tamara, on the other hand, is at Mr. Natali's house, where she seduces him, but he resists her advances. The following day, Tamara is out with a sassy look and attitude. She goes to meet Mrs. Natali, who is a guidance counselor in the school as Mr. Natali. Mrs. Natali is surprised that Tamara is aware of their infertility issue. Mr. Natali, after hearing from his wife, confronts Tamara about her knowing his personal problems, and of course, she denies it. He becomes upset and tired of Tamara, but she vows to never leave him. Chloe sees the exchange between the two and figures that something must be up between them. Patrick, who doesn't want all that happened to spoil his senior year, organizes a party in his house. Tamara stands in front of the mirror as she prepares for a party she wasn't invited to. She has the power to read people's minds and realizes her father's drinking problem had driven her mother away, and that he also fantasizes about having sex with her. Tamara places a spell on him to finish a beer bottle, and he literally finishes it by chewing on the bottle of beer, including those in the fridge. Tamara goes to Patrick's party, and he's nowhere close to happy on seeing Tamara. Patrick approaches her and asks her why she's present, but she places a spell on him, and all he can do is lust over her body. Sean is irritated to see Patrick dancing with Tamara. He tries to stop him, but falls under the spell too. Keisha tries to stop Tamara, but a spell is placed on her, and Keisha, who has always maintained a perfect body for her boyfriend Sean, begins to eat uncontrollably. Chloe and Jesse are quick to leave the party with Keisha. Chloe is ready to face the circumstances of partaking in covering Tamara's death. She decides to tell Mr. Natali all that happened, Keisha, who is in the back seat of the car, calls Sean to tell him their plans, but Tamara picks up the call. Chloe is angered that Tamara knows their plan and knocks Keisha out. She notices that hungry Keisha had chewed her fingers. Mr. Natali, Jesse, and Chloe head to Tamara's home where they find Tamara's father taking his last breath after chewing on beer bottles, and this had caused cuts in his throat. They head to Tamara's room where they find a spell book that explains what happened after Tamara died that night. When she died, her blood was spilled, and this completed the love-binding ritual which required blood. The completion of this ritual made her rise from the grave, as she had powers to control people through touch. Sean and Patrick, still under Tamara's spell, go to Mrs. Natali's house at Tamara's command to kill her. While Mrs. Natali struggles with the two teenagers, Mr. Natali calls the police after failed attempts to reach his wife. The police arrive after Mrs. Natali killed the teenagers in self-defense. She is injured during the fight, and she's rushed to the hospital. Keisha is also taken to the hospital for treatment. Tamara visits Keisha at the hospital, and Keisha, still under the influence of a spell, chases Jesse and Chloe. She is out to kill them, and she eventually stabs Jesse to death in the hospital's kitchen. Chloe appears behind Keisha and once again knocks her out. Tamara heads to Mrs. Natali's room at the hospital. Mr. Natali, who was there at the moment, runs to the top of the hospital with his wife. Tamara follows them to the roof, and she's upset that Mr. Natali doesn't show interest in her. She also refers to Mrs. Natali as a barren bitch. Tamara commands a police officer under her spell to shoot Mrs. Natali. She is, however, stopped by Chloe, who strikes her with an axe, but Tamara is unaffected. Tamara tries to use her power of touch on Chloe, but it doesn't work because Chloe actually cares about her. Tamara realizes how bad she has been and breaks down, gradually turning into a corpse, but she changes back. Mr. Natali realizes Tamara will never stop until she gets what she wants. He turns to his wife and mouths, "I love you," while he turns to Tamara and kisses her. Tamara, who is lost in their little romance, is pushed off the roof with Mr. Natali. Mr. Natali had to do this because after the ritual their fates were bound together, and he was the only one who could stop her. Chloe and Mrs. Natali are left alone in the hospital room, and they both hug to console each other. The movie ends with Keisha pulling a spellbook to herself with her bloodied hands. That's going to wrap up this recap. We hope you've enjoyed it. If so, please click the subscribe button with notifications turned on so you don't miss a single video.